I had to limit myself today because what we're getting into is obviously a continuation of last time where I brought up the Hat Man and we discussed. Yes, we discussed very briefly. I have a theory that I have a working, and that's what we're getting into today. Going to be talking a little bit about poltergeists. We're going to be talking about paranormal things just in general, but we're also going to be a little bit in my bag of how energy, emotions, trauma may or may not manifest in the body. And we're going to do a little bit, just very brief touch on fight, flight, freeze, fawn, and polyvagal theory.
Great. Okay.
So we're going to touch on all of those things. And so we're basically marrying your bag and my bag today.
Our bags are getting married.
Our bags are getting married. Great. So there are no content warnings for today, but before we get into continuing this theory that I have about the connection between the body and the paranormal, I'm going to tell you a story about an ant. About an ant. No.
About an
ant. Well, I'm going to tell you a story about a man named Donnie Decker. Also known...
Not to be confused with Donnie Darko.
Not to be confused with Donnie Darko. I thought the same thing.
Yeah, okay.
Also known as the Rain Boy. Have you
Not
ever...
to be confused with Rain Man.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right, exactly. Have you ever heard of this before?
No.
So
because it does sound like a parody of multiple things.
Of multiple things mushed together. I thought the same thing. And it's also really interesting that I stumbled across this. I did not go looking for it. And do you remember many moons ago your story about Clara? And you said in the show, I'll go look for a possession that involves a boy or a man.
Yeah, I couldn't find one.
But I couldn't find one. This is one.
I'm sat.
There are a lot of stories. There are a lot of happenings. If you look up this specific happenstance, that like rain inside, specifically water inside, rain inside, there are many stories about this.
Oh yeah, of like the ceiling raining and all of that.
Yes,
okay.
Rain manifesting inside. Okay, so We'll do a little story time and then we'll get into some other stuff. This is the story of the Rain Boy. On the night of February 24th, 1983, police officers stood inside a small house in Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania, watching water drip from the walls and the ceiling. There were no burst pipes, no obvious leaks, just wet walls, and a young man sitting silently in the middle of the room. His name was Donnie Decker. Donnie was 21 years old. At the time, he was incarcerated in Monroe County, serving a short sentence for receiving stolen property. That week, he'd been granted a temporary furlough to attend his grandfather's funeral. According to Donnie, the grandfather he was burying had abused him as a child. That claim never independently was verified, nor was there any medical records. But multiple witnesses later described Donnie as emotionally distant and withdrawn after the funeral. That night, Donnie stayed with friends, Bob and Jeannie Kiefer. And sometime late in the evening, the house began to get wet. Water appeared along the walls, then the ceiling, and then the floor. The landlord was called. No clear plumbing source was found in the area where the water was appearing. Police were called next. The officer confirmed the house was in fact wet.
Thank you, officer.
Thank you, officer.
Yes, this is good.
Some later said that the water behaved strangely, moving sideways, appearing without a visible source. Those descriptors come from eyewitness accounts alone. There were never any photographs taken, no samples collected, and no publicly available police record. When Donnie left the house, witnesses say the water stopped. Later, Donnie was inside a nearby restaurant and staff reported water dripping again inside the building. Supposedly, a crucifix was brought out. Donnie said that it had burned him, and there was no medical examination ever documented. So the multiple stories that I collected and read about, and of course, as you and I often find it difficult to do, is sifting through the sensationalism.
Yes.
This is very stripped down.
Okay. So it was like pretty bananas.
It was really, there was a lot of speculation and again, sensationalism, and the crucifix was brought out by what I have read to be a priest. And so they're thinking this is more so into, in retrospect, people talk about it as a demonic possession.
Okay.
So Donnie said that this crucifix burned him. And again, there's nothing really documented here. Which just obviously reminded me a lot of the your Clara story.
Yeah.
Back at the house, the reports escalated. Loud banging, objects rattling, claims that Donnie was lifted and or thrown. And these details later appear in retellings and witness testimonies and statements, but they are not reported. They are not supported by any physical documentation. So a minister was called. He prayed over Donnie. Witnesses said Donnie had convulsed, cried, and then collapsed. And after that, the rain stopped. This moment was remembered and has been retold as an exorcism. What can be confirmed is a religious intervention occurred and the reported activity ceased at the house.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's funny, though, too, because even the rain stopped really paints this picture of having, like, a shower head coming out of the ceiling, whereas I'm sure it was like condensation, right? Of like something is dripping from the ceiling and I can't figure out the source. That what is that? Mm-hmm. You know, that probably over time turned into like it's a rainforest cafe in his bedroom.
Right. Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. That's the way that I also received this information. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Later the next day, Donnie returned to jail. So, as we said in the beginning, he was on furlough. Right.
What an eventful furlough.
I know.
What did you do while you were out, man? How was it? Well, went to the funeral. That was kind of a bummer. And then, everywhere I went just like got really wet. And so a priest yelled at me and the cops came and there was like, I think I had a seizure maybe. And now I'm back.
Yeah, now I'm back.
That's it.
Yeah. And according to guards and the jail chaplain, guess what? Water appeared again. It
started raining.
Mm-hmm. So near Donnie's cell and later, a supervisor reported a sudden wet spot on his shirt while alone in his office. The chaplain said, there's a lot of things that could be.
What are you doing in your office by yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, go on.
Well, then the chaplain later said that it rained during their prayer that they had.
Okay.
Yeah. So wet spot. There's a lot of things we could say about that. But the chaplain says it rained during their prayer. And then, according to every account, it stopped. No further incidents were reported, no maintenance records were released, and no investigation followed. The entire event spanned less than 48 hours.
Interesting.
Years later, the story appeared on Unsolved Mysteries, which, by the way, is such a good show. Staple of my childhood, where he became known as the Rain Boy. Was this an environmental issue, misunderstood under stress? Was it deception? Was it a psychological or somatic response? What we can say without speculation is nearly every poltergeist case centers on a person under extreme pressure, grief, trauma, loss of control, and a system of some kind, social or institutional, that doesn't know where to put that energy. So, thoughts, questions, curiosities?
Honestly, just the fact that it's rain at all is so strange to me.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not, I don't know, to me, I don't understand any sort of symbolism around it.
Right.
And so it's just like, well, but I also am getting my wires crossed here because I'm thinking if it was demonic, why would it be raining?
Right.
If it's poltergeist activity, I'm more just thinking, I wonder why that's a common occurrence. Mm-hmm. So I think those are like my two schools of thought right now, is if it's evil, I don't get that. Everyone in California should really be going out of their way to be possessed or something, but
make it rain.
Yeah. But
it's only ever happens inside too. So that's important.
Right. And so I don't know. But if it's a poltergeist thing, I understand that like you are ultimately like creating enough energy that something has to kind of manifest itself and then something has to be done with that. But again, I'm like, but why moisture? Yeah. Like, why are you just turning my house into a mold party?
Yes. Yeah. Like, what's the why water?
Yeah.
How does water, how does water make us feel?
But I guess if water is like all about transmuting, then maybe it's the energy trying really, really hard to like become something, and water's the easiest way to move into something. I don't know. Maybe there's something with that.
I'm not a scientist by any means.
You're
but not? Shocker. I was getting into some science stuff doing this, and I very quickly became I was like, oh, this is way outside of my...
I need to go back to my notes now.
I need to go back to what I understand and know. But it really does help us. We're going to get into a little bit of the different types of energy, which was something that this whole concept of energy cannot be destroyed nor created. That's conceptually a, Einstein's quote about total energy. So we're talking about, lots of scientific things that I don't quite understand, but I was more so focused on what's called neural energy and metabolic energy in the body and in the brain. And I'm going to try and stay as much in my lane as possible while just briefly mentioning these things. And we're not going to get too deep into it because honestly, I think that it's I don't know enough about it to speak on it. And I encourage people to learn more about it. I'm also had all these charts pulled up and all of these, different notes, cross-examining things and thinking about this theory that I have. So this is all in progress, is what I'm saying. It's not a completed. We look forward to your thesis. Yes, exactly. And as far as I'm concerned, I haven't quite found this exact framework, and my brain loves to make sense of things and put things in categories and make connections. And so this is me sharing that with everybody else. One of my little works in progress. So from episode 1, well, I guess not episode 1, but from the last episode, we stayed with one figure, the Hat Man, and explored when he appears and why that timing matters. So now this episode is again kind of a continuation of that, but what becomes clear is that not all fear feels the same. And if fear doesn't feel the same in the body, it may not look the same perceptually either. Mm-hmm. So again, like I said, this is a working theory, not proof, not diagnosis, not a claim about external entities. Think of this as like a map of curiosity, not any statements of truth, is where we're going with this. Okay. So I know I briefly touched on like neural energy versus metabolic energy. So do you have any idea about these things? Do you know about this?
No.
Okay. So this is the framework and which I thought was so cool because this is for our podcast to be about fear and belief. This feels very important to implement into, I guess, either retroactively and in future stories. This is something we can return to and be like, ooh, this is tapping into this or that. So it's a cool framework for just the structure of our podcast in general. Okay, so neural energy, think fast and interpretive. This all explains why fear takes form at all. Neural energy is electrical, fast, image-based, symbolic, predictive, and it handles things like perception, pattern recognition, meaning making, and just overall question, what is happening? So
it's your brain going, what do we do?
Yes, it is quite literally the brain trying to understand.
What alarm do we sound?
Yes, okay, exactly. Metabolic energy is slow.
Is that your body response?
And bodily. Correct. Yes, you're on it. So metabolic energy, think chemical, muscular, hormonal, breath-based, action-based. And it handles things like movement, impact, escape, connection, discharge. Metabolic energy is the body trying to do something.
So the metabolic response is like the fight, flight, freeze, fawn thing.
And both neural and metabolic, we'll get into. I have a really cool analogy about a building that we'll get into that'll give you
determine what you're doing.
Yes, right? Yes, exactly. So they play with each other and they engage. And this is also, if you're in the clinical field, we're talking parasympathetic and sympathetic responses, and this all has to do with polyvagal theory. Under stress, neural energy can activate instantly. Metabolic energy takes longer to move. So when metabolic energy can't complete, neural energy often fills in the gaps with imagery.
Oh, so you would sort of like picture the worst, or
so when the body can't finish an action, potentially that's what's up for question here.
Okay.
So when the body can't finish the action, the brain finishes the story.
Okay, because it's like a body in motion must stay in motion. And if there's an asterisk to that, then your brain's like, then what happened?
So imagine the body as a building where energy moves between floors.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll start with our ground floor. So the ground floor is our metabolic system. That's, think action and discharge. Again, muscles, breath, hormones, heart rate. This floor wants movement, it wants completion, and wants things to go somewhere. So this is where survival energy lives.
Okay.
The middle floor is where we're getting into like polyvagal states, is the nervous system. Think, can I fight? Can I flee? Can I freeze? Or can I attach? Which would be fawn. So energy gets directed or stalled here in the middle floor. So it either goes into fight, flight, freeze, or gets suspended in fawn. So the top floor is the neural meaning making. Think images, symbols, narratives, and threat attribution.
Okay.
So when lower floors are overwhelmed, this floor starts improvising explanations.
Okay.
So the brain is trying to make sense of unfinished energy. Mm-hmm. Okay. So this is something that is pretty cool. Structurally and metaphorically, think of the roof as shared symbols and culture. So think archetypes, myths, figures like the Hat Man, Poltergeists, protector figures. So culture doesn't necessarily create the fear, it just gives the symbolism to it.
Yeah, helps you identify it.
Yeah, exactly. So we can get a little bit into fight, flight, or freeze, but before we move into that, questions, curiosities?
Not yet.
Thoughts?
I'm tracking with you.
Okay. So again, very lightly here, polyvagal theory helps explain how the nervous system moves between safety and survival.
Okay.
So, and the whole overarching theme here is, how can I survive? That's, the body is constantly just trying to survive. So that's also the framework that we're working with. So safety and connection, think ventral vagal. Safety and connection, this is where you experience calm, curiosity, and social engagement, and your energy moves freely. Sympathetic is when you're mobilized, think fight or flight. This is high, outward, and urgent. This is like, okay, what am I doing here? What's happening? And dorsal vagal is immobilization. This is freeze. This is when your energy is trapped, slowed down, or contained. Fawn is not one that's very recognized, but it's really important.
I've only ever heard you say it.
Okay, so fawn is just as important as fight, flight, or freeze. So fawn is not a reaction necessarily, it's a strategy. So think something when I can't fight, when I can't flee, and when I can't freeze in place. When none of those will work, I strategize relationally.
Okay.
Think this is where things like appeasement, protection, attachment, proximity happen.
Yeah, I'm like trying to be friends with the murderer.
Exactly. It's like, I want to I can't do anything else.
No, I do want to hear about your stuff. Yeah, totally.
Exactly.
Tell me about your plans.
Appeasement. This also manifests in attachment all the time. Being a recovering fawner myself, there's a lot of trauma can manifest itself in that. Specifically, a lot of people who are neurodivergent especially experience fawn because it works. This is a bridge over into this theory of energy seeking shape. So bringing neural energy and metabolic energy together. Metabolic energy wants completion is what it wants, right? It wants to see things through. And we can get into stuff here about think about how a lot of westernized religion is, a lot of your pain and suffering is because your energy is trapped in your body.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
That is a little bit misconstrued. It's one of those things where it's like, okay, I see there's really good intent here, but there's a lot of stuff missing from that narrative.
Don't tell Teal Swan that.
Don't tell Teal Swan. Yeah, she'd be pissed. The neural energy wants an explanation. So your brain wants an explanation. Your body wants to go through to completion.
Yeah.
Something like somatic therapy, whenever you're in therapy with a somatic specialist, they'll often tell you or guide you through completing your fight or flight response in a certain circumstance where you had a trauma. That way your body can metabolize the emotions and see it through to completion. And then that can be really healing for the nervous system. When energy is high, when action is blocked, and when connection is unavailable, perception organizes the experience. So fear doesn't just stay inside, it organizes or can organize the world around us. So with all of this being said, laying the groundwork here, my theory proposes that paranormal style experiences such as the Hat Man, poltergeists, sleep paralysis entities, and even seemingly benevolent or relational figures may be expressions of the nervous system attempting to complete a survival response when a person is under extreme or unresolved distress.
Okay.
So rather than being random hallucinations or externalized supernatural events, these experiences emerge when the fight or flight fawn responses are activated, but they can't fully resolve due to constraints like immobility, threat ambiguity, relational danger, or chronic stress. So in this framework, the body and brain externalize internal survival states through perception. They create figures, movements, or presence so that the organism your body has something to respond to and can metabolically discharge and organize the survival energy. So think my body has to be able to perceive this in order to respond to it because it's an externalized threat.
Oh, okay. Okay. Got it.
Does that make sense?
It does to me. Yeah.
Okay. So my one question about this was, okay, what about shared delusion? Fully I do, right? Like what about whenever people, just like my story that I told last episode where my mom and I both saw the Hat Man, right?
Yeah.
I was like, well, what about that? And so I was sitting with, contemplating, looking things up, and I was thinking about how potentially what we call a shared delusion can actually be a shared survival physiology. So when people are bound together and they're both under chronic stress, they're both have their nervous systems under threat, they organize perception in similar ways, and then the story can later be made to create more sense in that state, right?
Can we revisit when you guys saw the Hat Man real quick?
Yeah.
I know she slammed on her brakes. Was it because you screamed? Was it because she screamed? Like, what was the order of events?
So she didn't even slam on her brakes. She swerved.
She swerved. Was it because
she
you
swerved.
made a sound or a movement?
I can, in my memory, which we know is not a very reliable narrator, we both saw this Hat Man on the horse at the same time.
Right.
I gasp. She swerves around him.
In that order.
The
reason I ask is because, first of all, I believe you 100%. It does not matter that I'm trying to make this scientific. I think it's all paranormal.
But part of me is like, okay, and maybe it's a little bit of both.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, for the sake of what you're talking about right now,
right.
I can see that there's a world where it's not, at least, maybe it doesn't take away all shared delusion conversation and argument, but at least for this one, there's a world where if I had taken both of you to separate corners of that cornfield or whatever and said, tell me what just happened. You might have told the story that you told, right? And she might have told the story of, I heard Jeri gasp, it scared me because I'm already panicked.
And I swerved.
I swerved thinking she must see a deer or something. Then when she told me, did you see that guy on a horse? I guess I must have. You know, like maybe she wouldn't have even said that she saw something, or because like memories are just the last time you thought about something.
Right.
It's not actually like a recollected, like whatever. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't actually live in your head as a memory. Every time you think about it, you're just thinking about the last time you thought about it. But maybe there's something to that of, by the time you guys talked about it together, she was in such a state that it was just like, yes, I saw that happen, and now that's her reality. Mm-hmm. You know
I do know what you mean, and that's why we're even talking about this, is because, of course, I'm desperate to share this. Not only am I desperate to share this story, I'm desperate to be like, okay, what the fuck happened? You know what I mean? Like, what was it? And having recently talked to her about it.
We want answers.
Yeah, which I'm literally never going to get. And talking to her about it since then, too, is like, okay, well, things just change. Like, I'm like, okay, well, we can talk about this. But the last time we talked about it, it was like, but you didn't remember if it was, right? But then, but now you're for sure certain about it.
Like, no, yeah, I remember seeing him, but you guys have talked about it enough, or enough times past that it's
and
like,
I know
remember what I remember.
And mine has stayed consistently the same, and hers is like, well, this is what I remember, but do you remember it differently? Like, it kind of wavers. She's a little bit...
And now, who knows?
I'm like...
Like, your story at some point may have changed, and you don't even know that.
Oh, I'm sure it has, because I'm like, okay, I remember I wrote a bunch of stuff down right after it happened, which really helps because now I be like, okay, this is, so that's what I clung on to was my account of it or recounting of it right after it happened. And that's what I return to and create this is like holding me in this reality of this experience. And then the main thing of like, okay, in my pattern recognition brain, so many stories, every single story I have heard about one, it raining inside. People are talking about it as far as poltergeist activity, which for those of you who haven't listened to the other episode, I know this episode kind of stands on its own. So the story that I told in the last one was that I experienced a what I deemed to be some sort of paranormal experience where there was water with no source inside of my room, and then also maybe 45 minutes later saw the Hat Man. So of course in my world I'm like, what are other people's experiences of this? So many people experience water with poltergeist activity in chronic states of distress, and so many people experience the Hat Man when they're going through deeply emotional disturbances, but it's in a projected, almost neutral, not scary way. Even though I refer to this as having been like seriously one of the scariest things I ever experienced, the Hat Man himself didn't make me feel terrified. We were already scared. It's one of those instances where I, of course, have gone and found out that so many other people experience these things.
Right.
I have yet to find one where they also experience them together, but there's just so much content on the internet that it's like impossible to sift through, you know? Okay, so the chart that I sent you. Okay, so I, in my pattern seeking brain, matched every fight, flight, freeze, fawn response to a potentially commonly reported experience.
This is cool.
Yes. So think flight, sympathetic vigilance, where you're scanning for threat. You see someone like a watching figure or the Hat Man, right? Because you're scanning for threat. Your body imagine, right? This is again theorized. Imagine your body is in a state of suspension and it manifests as a watching figure that then you respond to, right? So it engages your flight for you to get going, you know. Freeze, think dorsal immobilization. You're feeling trapped, you're feeling static. This is when something like a sleep paralysis demon or some sort of figure or thing is keeping you frozen so that your body actually is able to respond to what it feels like to be in a frozen state. And you're able to like metabolize it, right? Fight energy, survival state, think like sympathetic discharge. This is like outward explosive poltergeists. This is where poltergeists come in. So objects moving, raining, water falling, things dripping, right? It's this movement that you're engaging with and responding to. And then fawn, whenever you're under attachment threat. So when you're seeking different levels of attachment and proximity. Do I get closer to this person or do I get further away from this person or this entity or this thing? Think protective figure, a guide, or a comforting presence. And I even just recently, I'm not going to completely retell this story, but someone just told me their birth story, and they, in the middle of this really deeply traumatic experience, saw a very comforting person who had previously passed standing beside them at their bedside. And they said to me, yeah, it comforted me so much that he was standing there. It didn't freak me out. And so as I'm putting all this stuff together.
Yeah, like my protector guy at my haunted house.
Yes, exactly. So, yeah.
I wonder,
Mm-hmm.
First of all, I love this. This is very cool and nerdy and awesome.
Yeah.
Secondly, the Hat Man is so often reported, period. But also, I feel like especially in sleep paralysis situations. Like to me, you telling me about seeing him awake was actually stranger. And so I wonder if some of this, it's like, because can you do simultaneous survival states at once? Like,
yes.
Can you flight and freeze?
You absolutely can't. So think about your building, right? You can go down one hallway.
Elevator can be on both stores.
Yeah, it can be like wavering. Now, fawn is kind of in its own bag, but fight, flight, freeze. Your body or your brain, not your body yet, because your body hasn't reacted, but your brain can be kind of glitching between states.
Yeah, and fawn is what would happen if like it can't find something to stick
Correct.
to or
Yes.
hold to. Well, because and the thing about fawn is I actually think I might put the rain more with fawn. Honestly, even poltergeist in general. Here's why. If the idea of fawn is like I've run out of options and now I'm just trying to kind of like placate you to save myself, that to me feels more like manifesting energy and something trying to communicate, because a poltergeist is making a lot of noise. Well, I guess a poltergeist in the sense that it's making a lot of noise and it's causing a lot of stuff does feel very much fight. But in the sense of a poltergeist with like rain happening feels more like fawn, because that to me feels like some sort of communication than an attack.
Okay, so this is really, this is peak conversation in my opinion. So this
Finally.
after 20 episodes, this is, you're describing the way that your system is responding to something like water. So for you, say that one more time, what you just said.
That to me, something like manifesting something physical like water versus manifesting something physical like movement feels like trying to communicate. Because I'm thinking of like scrying and that sort of thing. Like water is so transmutable. Like water is where energy changes. And so to me, that seems like I am trying to say something to you. I'm trying to work with you. I'm trying to figure something out with you. And other poltergeist activity obviously feels more like an attack, because it's like, hey, look, I threw you out of your bed. That feels different.
Right.
So that piece of the poltergeist stuff to me feels more like it's in the fawn category.
I guess the part where it feels like, so where the distress comes in is there not being any logical source. That's the part to me that then, because I'm like, oh, what was it about this? Obviously, this is all incredibly influenced by my personal experience. So let's start there.
Well, but I'm also thinking, though, that when I'm saying all of this, I'm also saying it with the assumption that so is a poltergeist. Like, it's also impacted by your physical sin. Because my belief, let me level set. My belief is that we as human beings create poltergeists.
Yes, right.
Once they're created, we may leave them somewhere.
Correct.
But that kind of haunting is man-made, because you have, and that's why so many of these cases happen around like puberty or around
transition,
like significant trauma,
distress,
transition.
Yes.
Yeah, because you have all of this energy. And you can only use so much before, or suppress so much before it has to come out somehow. Yes. And I think that that can be almost a subconscious push where you expel it all, but it's still around. And that's when, again, it's like bouncing off a wall, sort of like Flubber. Have anybody seen that movie? It's like bouncing around off the wall until finally it's like, I have to do something. Yeah. And it becomes this, I'm like, picture like a ball of energy, right? That then can almost act as a magnet and keep pulling in energy. And it doesn't even have to be yours anymore. If someone comes in your house and they're screaming and they're whatever and they're putting all that energy and vibration into a wall, well, now my little poltergeist ball over here is going to suck it up, and now it's bigger, and now it's strong enough that it could actually push me off a bed, or it could knock something off of a bookshelf and something like that. And so that to me is like, you made that happen. But that's why I think I'm also having a hard time for some reason, even following that. Like, I understand that people are saying that the rain and the poltergeist thing happened simultaneously, but to me that seems just as weird as you having that experience and the Hat Man. Like, it just seems very rare to me. Yeah. And that we shouldn't just assume that it's all related, because
I think it can be both. I think it can be both. I think it can be what you're saying, and why couldn't, and this is so funny because we're approaching something, this is where I wax and wane, right, of like the illogical and the logical. I'm like trying to make something logical that's illogical,
and that's why I'm trying to be very upfront of like, I will 100% believe that this is paranormal. You cannot convince me otherwise. Yes. However, I will find the relationship.
And what says that I think that it's important to name here that we're using these words I think that there's a world where we could be calling it fight, flight, freeze, fawn, and in the room over, someone is calling it something paranormal or supernatural, and I'm like, yeah, you're both
The
describing
analogy that
something.
this is bringing this is so stupid, but this is something I think about way too much to be healthy. I learned about this in philosophy a million years ago.
Yeah.
But the idea that you and I can look at a color.
Oh God, yes.
We both call it purple.
Yes.
Right? But I see purple as what other people might call orange.
Right.
But regardless, we've learned the same color the way that we've learned it. And so
that's exactly what I'm saying.
It's that, right?
Yes.
It's that, like, we're all saying the same thing, but we have no way to know if we're actually like talking about something totally different. And that's that's my brain.
And
today.
that's it. Yeah. Well, I think that okay, so this is something that, again, this is about patterning, as we're describing, not like specific classification. So this doesn't necessarily mean that one experience equals all states, right?
Right, but it's like what players are in the game.
Yes, and experiences overlap, bodies move between states very rapidly and without our awareness constantly all day long.
Yeah.
Like you and I, even in this conversation, have transitioned from one place to another within our own states, our energetic states. I used to and still see a world, I mean, to me, why can't a poltergeist reign? Even in your, like, right, like the way that you're describing what you believe and how you feel, I'm like, to me, if something manifests in that way, why can't it be material?
Water out of the pipes in my house.
Why can't it absorb it's absorbing the energy of your emotional state. Why can't it absorb the energy?
We just said that, like, water is all transmutable.
I encourage you to go and just look up poltergeist reign inside. And there are
I will.
thousands of reports on multiple platforms. There's episodes, and like I said, I think I don't know if I said this off air last episode or on air. I can't remember about how I even learned about the whole raining inside thing being a poltergeist situation after my own experience, was that I saw an episode where a person was saying that they thought their house was consumed by some sort of entity.
Unexplained or whatever.
Yeah, it was like unexplained or, again, an Unsolved Mysteries episode or something. I can't find it because it's so...
Or now we're just in a timeline where that never happened.
Yeah. So what is it?
Episode does not exist. It's the
Mandela effect. It's like never actually existed. And she had talked about it, and she thought that her house was possessed by some sort of entity, and then they were doing some sort of cleansing ceremony with a priest, and it rained in the house, and they were soaked. And I was like, that is crazy. And of course, then at that time, I think that the internet was like widely, anyway, I definitely couldn't look it up on my phone because I had a flip phone at that point, but giving it timeline wise. But point being, later on, years later, I was doing a bunch of looking things up and realized that there are many, many reports of people experiencing unexplained rain or water inside their homes. And there is more. So if we were to continue this thread, right, of visiting poltergeists and this energy language, as you're describing, and as many of us who are probably listening to this know, that poltergeists are often described as loud, chaotic, forceful, disruptive, and again, objects raining down. So whether it's something falling off of a shelf or it's water falling from the ceiling, or even what's so weird is people said in this Donnie story that the water was moving horizontally.
Well, I mean, poltergeist is German for angry ghost or noisy ghost.
Noisy ghost.
So
I actually didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. So that's why I was saying too, like, that to me sounds so much like it makes sense to go with like fight, because it's making so much noise, you know, it's being such a punk basically of like bothering and bullying, but now I don't know.
Yeah, fight.
I guess it depends.
I mean,
poltergeist.
Well, that's the thing is, like, okay, fight wants energy, fight wants that impact.
What do we mean by horizontal rain? Do we mean that it's like raining so hard that it's going sideways, or do we mean like instead of it coming down, it's literally just going
moving
across.
from one side to the other. So
I don't like that.
I know.
I don't like that.
In the more sensationalized stories that I read about this Donnie guy, the rain was, imagine it like take the atmosphere and flip it sideways, where the rain was flying across the room sideways.
Okay.
Well, rain in the fight context is like it's uncontrollable or uncontrolled. It's overwhelming and it happens to you.
Yeah.
And that's oftentimes what like unexpressed anger feels like, is what I was thinking.
Sure.
Is that it like happens
follow that.
to you.
Yeah, it like consumes you all of a sudden and you're like,
yes,
I'm so ashamed of how I just acted, but I could not help it.
Mm-hmm. Have you learned at all about, and we're kind of stepping into this concept of the shadow self, but do you know anything about Jungian theory around the shadow?
Yes, because for the longest time I was going to go to school for psychology.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did a lot of like, what would you call, like all the prerequisites for psych. So yes, studied a lot of Freud and Jung.
Yeah, so we'll like briefly touch on this. I would love to elaborate on this further, but like I said, this has many little...
Well, we should actually have
tentacles.
A dedicated episode to shadow because of the fact that so many people, I feel like, now pervert it. And it's like,
yes.
Okay, everyone in this yoga class, let's talk about your shadow. And it's like, whoa, actually, nope, that's not how this works.
That's literally traumatic.
Yeah. So, yes. So
okay.
we'll pin everything that you don't get to.
Yeah, I will definitely do... Okay, noted. We'll do a whole, maybe even next episode as a continuation. I'll kind of change my timeline and we'll kind of expand on this shadow self concept. But just in short, Carl Jung introduced the shadow as not evil or paranormal and not pathological, but that the shadow is disowned anger, disowned fear, disowned power, disowned needs, and that the shadow self isn't what's bad, it's what was pushed out to survive.
It's like a little internal purgatory of feelings and vibes.
Yes, and that... yeah. Put so succinctly by the beautiful Heather. So when it's pushed out, it doesn't vanish, it moves. So it moves into things like symptoms. It moves into perception, and it moves into the body. So
now you become a serial killer.
Again,
in an episode of Criminal Minds.
We're returning to this concept of this whole westernized, perverted language around this energy that's stuck. And it's like, whoa, there's a lot more here.
We just have to move it.
Yeah. So what
I say is I'm first degree Reiki. I'm just gonna shut up a little bit. Yep.
There's a lot of pins here that need to be explained. Yeah,
I contain multitudes, okay?
You contain multitudes and you're properly informed. So what isn't integrated internally often can appear externally. Again, whether it's symptoms, whether it's what we're describing and talking about here today. So with all of that being said, this is a little bit less than necessarily a lesson or an exploration in someone's potential disturbances, but more so about, I guess, some meaning making, some pattern recognition, some putting things in specific boxes and understanding. So I conclude that, maybe these experiences aren't signs of something that's invading us, but signs of energy moving through systems that we are trying to survive.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I like your theory.
Yeah.
I also though do feel like, multiple things can be true at once. I think more so what I'm taking away from this is that it's actually easier than I might have expected to fit a lot of supernatural paranormal belief into scientific belief of just like, if I believe that this happens, why can't I say, and here's the part of my body that's recognizing it?
Well, here's the thing too, though, is I wouldn't even go so far as to say that it's scientific, because science doesn't recognize some of this more physiological metabolic stuff.
That's true.
Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of like in this weird suspended in-between state where we don't really have a lot of research. Now, we do have a lot of research around, okay, what parts of the brain light up, or what's the system or the body doing in response to this threat.
Yeah,
but we're in some gray area here for sure.
Physiological response is almost supernatural in and of itself, just purely based on definition of to be above natural.
And it's the perfect grounds for exploitation. right? Of like,
Yeah, 100%. Because
as
there is no yes or no. It's
exactly.
just belief. And,
So many people out here doing both therapy as a licensed professional, quote unquote licensed professional, and people who don't have a bit of credentialing out here doing things within this system of the body being in a very suspended and vulnerable state.
Like Shmuel Shman.
Shmuel. Yeah. So that is a little meaning making framework, a little touch of what we can suspend out there as part of our curiosities whenever we're talking about different cases and different happenings, and whether it's paranormal, whether it's questionably involves something like a hallucination or a projection or an attachment even. There's just so many different ways we could look at this.
Going back to not Donnie Darko, what was his name? Donnie Decoy. That's what I'm going to call him.
Decker.
Donnie Decker.
Yes, yeah.
Going back to him, what's funny is, well, one, selfishly, I do kind of want to hear the really, salacious version of the story.
Oh, I'll send it to you.
But also, when you were first telling me before I, put together that he was going back the next day because he was just out on furlough.
Yeah.
My first thought was like, I bet you anything Ed and Lorraine are going to show up in this story.
Ooh.
And then I was like, oh, well, they can't because it was only 48 hours. And then I also thought, well, why not? I'm surprised they weren't like, we're going to go do this investigation in the jail anyways. But, so I was surprised when they didn't show up. But I think that there's something to that was such a blip of a 48-hour occurrence. But it got enough that it was even on Unsolved Mysteries, right? Which is really interesting. But I think where I'm going with this is that what you were saying earlier about how many stories there are of like poltergeist rain, right? And yet I hadn't heard that, but I also I don't remember that Unsolved Mysteries episode. I'm just rambling. But my point is just that it's strange to think how frequently this probably happens, but that in that one case, just the fact that he was out of jail is probably the only reason someone picked it up, right? Because it's like, oh, look at this guy who's going back to jail.
And it's a man that's experiencing some sort of like demonic possession adjacent thing that feels very... And he later on, there's like other parts of the story that, from when he was younger and a potential, I guess I should put a... content warning about, like reference childhood sexual trauma, where it is, it's alleged that his grandfather abused him as a child. And so many reports of paranormal activity, like we've already stated even just a few minutes ago, have to do with a lot of traumatic experiences. And I mean, that could be the chicken or the egg kind of a situation because so many people, oh my God, so many people experience abuse. Yes. That it's like, okay, is this actually a correlation or is it just a high...
Is it just a coincidence?
A high likelihood. Through it? Yes. Which I was just having this conversation with my friend yesterday about, I don't think that we're, as a society, emotionally... I don't even know what to say. I don't think that as a society we're ready to discuss that abuse is not gendered. And I have a lot of really strong opinions about that, and that can be kind of reserved for another day. But just based off of my own experience of working with survivors, there are a lot of people who experience abuse from so many different areas and levels and spaces and places that it's so pervasive that... And all the studies we have are only on the people who actually have reported it, and much stuff is unreported. So again, I say, with all that being said, it's like, okay, is it that just a high likelihood that so many people have experienced abuse that of course the paranormal is correlating because it's, what is the right term for that in research whenever it's a coincidence, you know what I'm trying to say.
Positive.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, but yeah, I mean, I think exactly to that point, there's so many people who have experienced abuse. There's so many people who have experienced some sort of supernatural phenomenon. Mm-hmm. But how many people talk about it or tell you about it or, I don't know. But this was good. This was really interesting, and I didn't know that story, and now I'm going to have to look into it. But yeah, it's neat to kind of pull together these pieces of here's your brain, and then here's all the stuff that it can't understand, and here's your body reacting to it, and here are the pieces at play when this supernatural phenomenon is occurring versus a different one. Like, interesting.
Yeah, and at the very least, your body is responding to some sort of stimuli, whether it's internal or external. And I say that in the context of whether your brain has created it as something to respond to, or whether something else created it and you're responding to it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, see, we're not living in a simulation. We keep making our own our own simulations. We're being controlled by poltergeists.
Oh, if only things could be explained so simply. That would be pretty cool.
Nice work, Jeri.
Thanks
Good
so
job.
much. I was really
You're so smart.
I was just geeking out today. It's like, and
Making
also
charts
too,
and stuff.
I just really encourage anybody who's listening that has any sort of further context, or I mean, I kind of don't even know where to go with like, oh, what kind of specialist do I talk to geek out about this with, and who has more information than I do about this is where I'm kind of a little bit like, ooh, how do I, I know the somatic people, I know the therapy people,
yeah,
but
like,
where do I go from here? So anyways, that's where I'm at, and I will keep you updated if anything, there's any kind of movement or anything in my theory. So, or if I gather any more data, maybe in a year we'll have some cool further context, and maybe we'll, it's funny because I was like, oh, why are there not studies about this? And I'm like, oh, it's not necessarily something you'd get funding for,
Right.
Like, oh, right, the money, right? The money doesn't really lend itself to being like,
we want to figure out why it's raining.
Why is it raining inside? Anyways, there we go. I'm excited to hear your story next week.
Yes, I'm excited to tell you about it.
Cool.
Cool.
All right,
Thanks,
see you
everybody.
later. Bye.
Bye.